Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr. Dave, and this is Mr. Dave's Outdoors Adventures. And thank you for joining me on this series. We're talking about safety, specifically the most common injuries you're going to face while you're out on a trail. So, being a novice hiker, I wanted to be prepared for things that I would face out there hiking. And at the top of my list was safety. So this video, it's going to address injuries, and again, it's going to be the most common ones you're probably going to face out on the trail from time to time. Now, as a caveat, I am nowhere near a medical professional, so always consult the advice of a doctor. Okay, always, can't lose there. So these items, we're going to be covering one item each week for the next 10 weeks. No particular order, of the categories. But one of the ones I really wanted to start off with is something that I struggled with at one time early on hiking. I never really had the means to invest in a nice pair of hiking shoes. So I typically would wear whatever shoes I had. Usually they were my sneakers that I wore every day, and they're all beat up and worn down. And I would just take them out on the trail, put my jeans on and head on out. And I was so miserable more often than not at a certain point of the trail because I developed blisters. and those are annoying, and they are a nuisance sometimes, especially when you're hiking. 9 times out of 10, if you're going to get a blister, you are going to get it on your feet. That's the biggest thing at the extremity that you're moving the most, right? Because you're walking, and really how blisters form, anywhere from rubbing together. You have that friction, especially on your toes. We talked about that in a prior video. Heat, cold, dampness, some chemicals that can all cause blisters. But usually when you're out on the trail, it's going to be the kind caused by friction, rubbing, sometimes also when it gets wet. So these blisters, just a side note, because I was doing some research on blisters, and yes, I researched blisters. The fluid that's in the blister, that is actually the fluid is there for a specific purpose, and that fluid, it cushions the tissue underneath to prevent further damage, and then it allows the area to heal. So you're going to have to come up with a great decision, an important decision if you lance it or not, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the first really important item in the treatment of blisters is the prevention of blisters. In order to prevent blisters, you have to be prepared for what you're taking out on the trail. So back to my story of the sneakers I wear and the footwear and getting those blisters. I said enough of that. So I did a lot of research on investing in great items for your feet. I heard me talking about the Ingenji sock liners, and I said I was going to get a pair of the Ingenji hiking socks, which I did. I invested in these, and so these are both toe socks, and so my toes do not rub up against one another, so there's no friction, skin on skin, so there's no direct rubbing. And ever since I've gotten these, I've had no blisters whatsoever. So that's the first part in preventing blisters, is what you're actually putting right on your feet. However, say you don't have a pair of the toe socks, or you can't find them, or they got wet, or for whatever reason you can't wear them. What do you do as a backup plan? So another thing that I like to keep in my pack, this. It is a pair of nylons, right? So in a pinch, what you can do is, if you don't have the toe socks, or your socks got wet or damaged or whatever, and you have to come up with something else, these are a great item to put over your feet and act as a liner and a buffer in between your socks, right, and your skin. So this will also help prevent blisters. So aside from what you're putting on your feet, as far as socks go, you also need to back it up with proper shoes, right? You heard me talk before about the high-tave shoes. I wear those all the time. The last hike I went on, which you guys will see in a couple of weeks, I opted for something a little bit more durable, especially on the ankles, things like that. So knowing what footwear to bring. I mean, if it's going to be a hike where you're more apt to get wet or you have to trudge through water, you might want to bring along, one of the lightweight high-tave, so you can dress properly and get that wet and be prepared for that. Sometimes you don't want your feet to get wet, and you want to get something that's a little bit more durable and waterproof. Again, make sure that whatever footwear that you choose, it's the proper footwear. Don't go out there in your beat-up sneakers. Don't go out there in your flip-flops. That is a mistake. Wear the proper footgear. Invest, if you can, in a decent pair of hiking shoes and the socks that go with it. You're going to prevent the majority of blisters happening that way. However, those things are not 100%, right? From time to time, you're still going to get a blister or two, right? And so the next step, if you can't, you've done all you can to prepare, you've done all you can to prevent the blisters, but you get one, the next step is the treatment of blisters. You want to make sure when you're out on the trail that you have some means of treating these blisters. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit longer and less enjoyable of a hike should you not have the proper means to take care of your blister. So again, this Adventure Medical Kit that we talked about in a recent video, we're going to see exactly what that has to treat a blister, and it has a lot of good things. Number one, it has that moleskin. This is really cool because I did a little bit more research on this. I've never used this before, but it's like a cloth adhesive, and it's like in the shape of a little donut, and you can put it right over your blister area. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You want to, bandages. Very important, alcohol prep pads, because with your lance, when we talk about lancing, you're going to have to make sure that whatever you use to lance it with is sterile. Okay, so if you can't bring something that's sterile already, you're going to have to sterilize it out on the trail. Typically, you want to boil it in water or heat it up to the point where it is hot, 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 hot. But sometimes maybe you don't have those means, and all you have is like an alcohol pad. At the very least, use the alcohol pad. Now, if by any chance somebody is treating that blister for you, treating that wound, maybe it's in a place on your foot that, it's just not comfortable to get to, this medical kit also has those rubber gloves. Make sure they're wearing rubber gloves because you want to clean the area off, and then you want to get ready to lance it. And the thing is, with that, make sure you have all your equipment ready to go, because the last thing you want to be doing is in stages just rummaging around and trying to get stuff. Have everything ready to go. Okay, so to lance or not to lance? I guess that's the question here. That fluid in the blister is there for a reason. It is kind of helping heal that area. And if it is not in an area that is going to get more friction or things like that, then maybe you just want to clean it and then bandage it up and just let it heal on itself, because that fluid will be absorbed back into the skin when that blister area heals. But usually, again, we talk, the majority of the time you get blisters are on your feet, and that is just not practical to let it heal on its own. So you have to take extra measures to treat that wound, and in this case you want to lance. This right here is not the way you want to lance a blister. Whew. Okay, first of all, something sterile with a safety pin, a needle. You want to make sure that it's sterile. You're going to clean the wound off, right? Again, prep the area, clean it off. dab it dry, and then at the bottom of the blister, that's where you want to lance it, right? Lance that blister, drain out all the fluid, right? Dry the area again, make sure it's still clean. Apply the moleskin around the area, and then use a bandage and some antibiotic ointment to bandage up directly over that blister, and then also if you need to tape it, depending on where it's located on your foot. And that's when you get a blister. Another thing that you want to be mindful of is, and that's the one thing I discovered that didn't come in this pack, were a pair of like medical shears. Because sometimes you want to cut tape, you want to, whatever the case may be, you want to have a good pair of scissors with you. So a pair of medical shears, that's one thing that I do not possess at the moment, but I will, just kind of discovering this and doing some research. So what can you use instead? Around the house, this is what I found. I found like a small, tiny pair of scissors. Again, it's lightweight. It'll cut through some tape. It's not going to cut through any fabric or anything like that. So you're pretty much limited on the use. But if you stick it in your medical bag, you'll get a good use out of it on a basic level. You could bring something a little bit heavier. This is just a pair of regular scissors. It will cut through fabric, but again, it's a little bit bulky and it's not the safest, probably. So you can use that. Or another item that I use, I carry this with me. It's another thing I carry on my pack with every hike. It's just an emergency tool. It's just a pair of scissors here. And it's a product by SOG. Really pretty cool. In a pinch, I always carry this because you just never know when you need it. Oh, and this side's pretty cool too. It is a pen, so combination scissors and pen. Anyway, in the comments down below, what do you use? Do you have medical shears? Do you use other things? Maybe it's a knife that you use. I don't know, or maybe it's something that, hey, I don't have one of those. I got to get it. Let me know in the comments down below. All right. So you've lanced it, you've dressed it, you've bandaged everything up, and now you're on the move again. Okay. You want to make sure you monitor that area. Are you getting any friction? Make sure that that area is as clean as possible, bandaged as possible. If you're still experiencing friction and/or pain, you really need to reevaluate what you're doing, because maybe you need to exercise some responsibility and kind of call it. I know it's a bummer, but sometimes you have to do in the interest of your own well-being. Regardless. If it's good and it's bandaged and you're making through, okay with minimal discomfort, make sure you check it, at regular intervals. Make sure it's clean. Change the bandage. Whatever you can do to help that area heal. Look out for conditions like where it might be. You might be getting infected if it's like a redness around the area. If that's the case, then you probably might want to seek some, medical advice for that. So I know blisters can be painful and certainly a hindrance on the trail, but with the right preparation, you can help prevent them for the most part. However, the preparation, as essential as it is, it may not completely eliminate blisters. Things happen. Conditions are adverse sometimes, and it still happens. Blisters still happen, right? So you need to be able to have something on hand in order to treat those blisters properly, right? So don't let that blister ruin your outdoor adventure, right? Be prepared and know how to fix it when it comes up, because it is one of the most common injuries that we experience out on the trail. So that being said, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned. The next installment of the safety series is going to be on cuts and scrapes, another common injury out on the trail. We're going to talk about prevention. We're going to talk about treatment. We're going to talk about a couple neat things that you can do. So for Mr. Dave's Outdoor Adventures, I'm Mr. Dave. Get outside and be adventurous.